So what would Martin Fowler do? I'm going to show you with code. In my previous video, I explained the Theatrical Players refactoring kata that comes from his book, Refactoring. In today's demo session, I'm going to go through it step by step, transforming the original crufty code into a paragon of good design in JavaScript. I think some of Martin Fowler's refactoring moves are a little surprising, so I'm going to explain why he does it like this and what you can learn from it. Hi, I'm Emily Bache. I'm a software developer and creator of Saman Coaching. Welcome to my channel. I would like to thank my sponsor, Tuple. They make a tool for remote ensemble and pair programming. A small, bootstrapped team of engineers who care deeply about software quality. I've tried Tuple, and it worked well. It was really smooth, especially to switch who is typing. It feels great to partner with like-minded people and have Tuple as our first sponsor. If you're looking for a tool to make pair and ensemble programming easier, more effective and fun, check out the link in the show notes. The code for the Theatrical Players refactoring kata is from the first chapter of Martin Fowler's book, and he kindly let me put it on my GitHub, and I've added some good tests that will support refactoring, and there are several translations. But today I'll be using the original JavaScript and the WebStorm IDE. I'm aiming to keep the tests passing after every step. So let's dive into the details of the exact moves that Martin Fowler makes. This is the code that we have to refactor here, the statement function. And the domain here is the Theatrical Players, so this is the statement that the customers who've been watching these plays get about what performances they've seen and how much they've paid for that and what volume credits they have earned, that kind of thing. So as I said, it's got good tests, so we're ready to start refactoring now. And if we just look through the code, there isn't that much of it, but this switch statement in the middle is the first target for Martin Fowler's refactoring. This is like a code paragraph. It kind of hangs together and it should probably be its own function. So if we just try and do extract function here, we get a function with 3 arguments. Isn't quite what we want. This amount is actually the return value here. So if we just extend the selection a little bit more and include that declaration of this amount, we get a much better method signature here. So the function is amount for play and performance. And that gets assigned to this amount. So that's all very well, but it's put that function here right in the middle of the previous function. So I'm just going to move that down to the end so that it's not in the way so much. Tests are still passing. This is probably a good moment for a commit. So I'm using Arlo's commit notation, extract amount for. So looking more closely at this new function, amount for, Martin Fowler has some naming conventions he prefers to use for like function arguments. So he renames this one to a performance and commits that. Rename variable, and then he likes to denote the return value of function by the name result. So renames that as well. And all the tests are passing. That was a very safe refactoring rename variable. So now amount for is looking a little bit more healthy, but then Martin turns his attention to this play variable. He could rename that a play, but he has other plans. So this is a play variable that is a local variable with a long scope. And that is a reason to turn it into a function so that you can call a function to get the play rather than holding it in a local variable all the time. So he extracts a function get play for, or just play for performance. And again, it's extracted it in the middle of the function and I prefer to see it at the end. So I'll just move it down. But that function is now fairly useful because from the performance now we can get the play and we don't need the local variable. So if we look at all the places this is used, first let's just commit that. Look at the places this is used, we can inline it. So we get rid of that local variable using inline, and now everywhere it was using the local variable, it's now calling the new function. And that's a bit more flexible in the design. So you can see here in the amount for argument list, we're calling play for as well. So this function doesn't need this variable anymore because we can call play for in here as well. So that's what we're going to just refactor this, running the tests after each one. calling play for and passing the performance. And that will mean that this argument play is no longer needed for this function, so we should be able to remove that. I'm going to use the refactoring tool with change signature to remove that one. And it does that both here and at the call site, of course, so it's a bit more convenient than doing it by hand. Okay, let's commit that. So we've removed the variable play from the signature of this function and actually replaced it with the call to the function. So now my statement function basically all fits on one screen. Okay, the next refactoring target then is another local variable, this amount. So again, we're going to inline that to remove the local variable and just use the function in all the places instead. Martin Fowler really doesn't like local variables. They kind of get in the way when you've got a long function like this and you're trying to take pieces of it out and extract them. So this is the next piece that Martin Fowler identifies that he wants to extract, the logic for adding volume credits. So again, we're going to do extract function, and he's going to name this volumeCreditsFor performance. volumeCreditsFor performance. That's a good name in keeping with all the others. And again, it's extracted it into the middle of the function, so I'm just going to move it to the end. And then let's see, I think we need to commit that. Just run the test first and check that it looks all right. Yeah, these comments there weren't adding anything. In fact, one of the comments was entirely misleading. So we'll remove them as well while we're at it and then do the commit. So we've extracted a new function, volumeCreditsFor. Now, this is a local variable here that is kind of coming in from outside. It's not being declared within this function, which is not very nice. And it's an accumulating variable. So we need to do a little bit of work to get this right. So I want to do replace this with a local variable that I'm then going to return. And then the accumulating will happen here outside the function call. So we need to do volumeCredits plus equals for the outer scope variable. So that's working. So I did split variable volumeCredits effectively. I've now got two of them, one inside the function and one in the top level statement function. Okay. Now I'm turning my attention to this format function. So this is a function pointer that's being used in two places, and it's not very convenient to use an actual function pointer here. So I'm going to turn this into a top level function. And Martin Fowler says that this isn't something he does very often, but it's useful here. So it's not one of the refactorings named in his book, so he doesn't have a list of steps for doing this, so I had to make something up. But I think this set of steps actually seems to work, and I need to add the argument there to the argument list. And now that should be absolutely equivalent to what we had before. So now instead of a pointer to a function, I've got an actually declared function. So I should probably commit that. So I did this by hand, but I have converted a function variable to a declared function. And then I can actually try and make this a little bit more domainy. So what this is actually doing is it's formatting the thing as US dollars. So I'd like to extract a little function US dollars. So let's extract that. Doesn't quite do what I was thinking, actually. I think this would work better if I, instead of extracting that part, I start by extracting the variable for the thing that's going to be converted to dollars. So I'm extracting a little variable number there. And now when I do the extract function again, it gets a better signature. I get that number passed in, and that's the number of US dollars that I want to format. So, and I can rename this as USD of the number, and then I can inline that amount for again. Get rid of that local variable. So that works, and now I can use the same USD function down here as well. So there I'm calling USD, and then I don't need to divide by 100 there. Great, so now I've dealt with the USD function, and I just need to move it down together with the other functions at the bottom. So this is really what I'm doing. I'm extracting pieces of logic and naming them and putting them all together here at the end. So that was extract function USD. Great, and now I can inline that format, and all my formatting logic there for US dollars is all gathered together in this function. So to review where I'm at, the statement function is even shorter, and it's really mostly now presentation logic all in the same place. But there is a few bits of calculation logic still mixed in that I want to extract out. Are you enjoying the refactoring so far? Well, you might be interested in my guided learning hour content on this channel, which is designed to help you and your team to learn practical coding skills like refactoring. The idea is that senior developers, perhaps you, will spend some of your time doing technical coaching so you build up the coding skills in your organisation. The materials that I provide on this channel and elsewhere help you to do that. There is additional training and mentoring available via the Saman Society that I founded. So getting started with a technical coaching program in your company should increase the skills of your developers and increase the quality of the code that you produce. The next bit of logic that Martin Fowler decides he wants to extract out is the volume credits calculation, which is here in this for loop. So he does a refactoring called split loop. And the mechanics of it are this: you basically duplicate the whole loop and then you delete half of the lines of code in it from one of the copies and then carefully the other half of the lines of code from the other copy. So now I've got a little for loop that just calculates volume credits. So I'll just make a commit for that. And this isn't quite ready to extract yet, though I need to slide statement to put that volume credits declaration closer to where it's used. So that was another refactoring, slide statement, run the tests, make a commitment, make a commit. Okay, and now this little bit of code is easy to extract as a function, and Martin Fowler names it total volume credits. And that's a nice little thing. And then, of course, I just want to move that function declaration down together with the other function declarations I've got at the end of the function. And just check it looks all right. The tests are still passing. And I should just clean up here and make a commit. Extract function total volume credits. So now I've got a function for this. That local variable there, Martin Fowler's not a big fan of local variables, so he inlines it and just puts the call to the function where the value is needed. So put that in a separate commit. Okay, so now this is looking better. There's still a mix of calculation and presentation logic in the for loop though. So we're going to do split loop again. This time we're going to extract out that total amount calculation. So it's the same mechanics. We duplicate the whole for loop and be careful to delete half of the first one and the other half of the second one so that we now got two for loops. Usually that's a fairly safe thing to do, but it is good to run the tests. And there, of course, are situations where it wouldn't be a valid refactoring, but it was here. Okay, so now we've got the total amount that we want to slide the statement there to make that close to the use. So that refactoring slide statement, run tests, make a commit. And then we've got a nice little chunk of code here that's easy to extract as a function for calculating total amount. Let's do that. And Martin Fowler names this applesauce, which is a slightly surprising move because he says in the text, well, he would like to name this total amount, but he already has a local variable called total amount, so he can't do that. And applesauce is his default name for something he doesn't know what to make a name for. So it's called applesauce. So again, I'm just moving that down the declaration next to the other function declarations. And now, of course, I can run my tests, can make a commit. So I am committing applesauce, but it's not going to live very long because now I've got that function. I can inline this local variable, and then the applesauce name is no longer clashing with the total amount, but I'll still make a separate commit for the inline. But now I should be able to rename it to what I wanted to name it in the first place, which was total amount. Okay, so the statement function now is looking quite a lot better. Just clean it up a little bit more and remove some excessive white space and review where we've got to. So the tests are passing. We've now got a nice little function, bit of functionality that's all about formatting the statement. And then we've got all these functions for doing the calculations about the performance. Most of them are taking the performance as an argument. There's another formatting function there for US dollars. and then a couple of pure calculations they're also using the invoice.performances there, all the performances, not a particular one. So there's a lot of helpful little functions here. And this is the point where we basically move into a different phase of this refactoring. We've extracted all the pieces, now we just need to kind of move them around and find better homes for them. So that's the focus for the next section of the refactoring. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get all the updates, and if you enjoy the video today, please hit like. You can support my work and get access to additional content for technical coaches via Patreon. So far, everything Martin Fowler's done has been encapsulated inside this statement function. But now we want to start splitting this up. So the first thing he does actually is extract a new function for the entire contents of this at the top level, which he calls renderPlainText. And that's kind of in preparation for assuming there's going to be another similar function called renderHTML, which was one of the design goals here, was to refactor it to enable that. So I'm putting this statement function back at the top level. It's the most important function here still, but now we've got a new renderPlainText. So just commit that. And the next steps basically is to try and prepare for the creation of that renderHTML function, because a lot of the things that that function needs are now encapsulated inside renderPlainText, and we need to pull them out into a new home where it can be shared between the two functions. So that's the next step then, is to create that new home for the functionality. So Martin Fowler creates a new entity, statement data, and he wants to add that as an argument to the renderPlainText function. So that it's totally empty at the moment. It doesn't do anything. It's just a new home for things that are going to be shared with the renderHTML function. So again, small steps, making commits, running tests often. And now the next thing to do here is to work out what should we put in the statement data so that we no longer need invoices and plays. We'll rename it data. It's a little bit shorter here. And of course we need to make a commit for that. But still, now, what are we going to move here? That's the interesting part. The first thing is to just say, well, it needs to know who the customer is, because that's like on the first line of the renderPlainText, it uses the invoice.customer. So let's put that into the statement data. So that doesn't do anything, but now we can get the customer from the data instead of the invoice. And at this point, now where else are we using invoice? Oh, we need it for the performances as well. But still, we've got the customer out. And let's just make a little commit for that, using the customer data from the data instead of the invoice, yeah? And the next target then would be the performances, I believe. So we can add another aspect to the statement data. It knows about the performances. So just adding that doesn't do anything. But now, of course, we can refer to data.performances instead of invoice.performances. And then invoice perhaps isn't being used. Well, it's being used down here in these other functions. So here we need to update these to use data as well. There we go, because data is in scope for this whole function. So we can use it here as well. Great. So now I think there's no references to the invoice any longer. And of course we can check that with the tool. No, find usages, didn't find any. And then again, we can use the tool to, well, let's make a commit before we do any more. But we can use the tool now with the change signature. And then we can remove the invoice parameter there. And it updates everything and the tests still pass. Great, let's commit that as well. This is another point in the refactoring where Martin Fowler does something that surprises me a little. So we've put the performances into the statement data, but then he decides that actually what we want to do is enrich each performance with additional functionality. So he creates a little function, enrich performance, and initially it doesn't do anything. I just need to move it at the end. I like to have my functions at the end. And then it needs to not do anything as well. At the moment, I've broken the code. So it needs to take an argument, a performance, and it needs to return a performance as well. But during this method, of course, it will be able to add functionality to it. So it doesn't want to do that to the original. It wants to take a copy. So that bit of code there, object.assign, that takes a shallow copy of the performance object and returns that, which means that we can now add stuff to it without affecting the original. So that was a pure refactoring, just introducing this enrich performance function. But now we've got a place to add functionality to performances. And the first thing that we want to add to it is, well, which play is this a performance of? And of course, that would be naturally found by calling the function play_for. But of course, play_for is a function that's not defined in this scope. It's defined in the renderPlainText function. So if we go over there and find it, there it is, we can basically copy it from here into the new scope where we want it. And then we can call that from in the enrich performance. So now we've got a performance which is enriched. It knows what play it is for. And in the renderPlainText, we just need to rename this a performance. Martin Fowler's nice naming conventions. That's better. We probably should have done that before in its previous home. But anyway, let's make a commit. So now we've enriched the performance with the relevant play. So now in the renderPlainText function, we can start to use that enriched performance to get the play instead of the function that we were using before. And the best way to do that actually is to call the new function from the old function. This is a typical refactoring trick actually when you want to move a method. You call the new method from the old place and then you inline the old method to get rid of it. And that effectively has moved the play_for function from the scope of the renderPlainText function into the scope of the new the statement function, and ultimately we're hoping to extract the statement data into its own scope as well. So now we've moved it out from the renderPlainText at least. Okay, so at this point the top level statement function is starting to come together with this new statement data domain concept that's now gathering more functionality. Unfortunately, I don't think I have time to show you all the steps. It's basically doing the same thing again and moving more functions into here. I'm going to skip ahead now so you get an impression of what happens nearer the end of this refactoring. So as you can see, the code's moved along quite a lot now. The statement function here has got this statement data that's got lots of different functions on it. In fact, all of the functions that were previously encapsulated within the plaintext function. And now I can extract this statement data into its own scope. I'm going to create a new function for this, create statement data. And at the moment it passes in all of those functions that it's using, but not the plays, which I actually wanted it to have. So I'm just going to add that as a parameter. So I'll just add a new one here at the end, plays, and the default value. So that doesn't do anything. I've got my new function, create statement data. Let's make a commit for that. Then this function, let me just see. I want to move all of these functions in here rather than leaving them here. So to make that easy, I'm just collapsing all the codes, and that gives you an opportunity to see what I've got. So there in the statement function, that's my original function that calls renderPlainText. I've got, 6 small functions that are doing various things to do with the statement data. And the basic what I want to do is to move those into create statement data. So for the first step, I just copy them, parallel change, just do the copy and then change the signature so that we don't pass them in anymore. So we're using the new copies. And then we can just run the tests and check everything's okay. Yep. And of course, it's not using the old copies now, so I can remove them. So yeah, that has now moved everything into this create statement data. Let's make a commit. Then I'm ready, I think, to move this create statement data into its own file, because it's really quite independent of the the rest of the functionality here. I think this module, statement.js, is going to be about creating statements and formatting them. And I'm going to put the calculations into another module. So let's create a file for that. New JavaScript file. Create statement data. That's what Martin Fowler called it. So I'll just copy that function into here. And then I need to export that so that it can be imported somewhere else. So all that functionality for doing the calculations is there. And then I can remove it from here and use my tool to import it from its new home. And the tests are still passing. So this is a really good moment in the refactoring to take stock. Let's just commit that. I've moved the create statement data to its own file, its own scope, its own module, and I've really completely separated the functionality to render the statement as plain text from the functionality to do all the calculations. And at this point, I think I might be ready to actually start to think about my new function, which is going to be called renderHTML. And it's going to take that same statement data. But at the moment, I think I'm going to stop this video now. I've shown you the main outline of the first steps of this refactoring that Martin Fowler does. He goes on, of course, to create this function, and then he turns his attention to refactoring the logic in create statement data. But I think I'm going to leave that part of the refactoring for another day. Happy coding!